All right, thank you very much. And so I'm going to be talking, where Stacy was talking about mostly about Facebook, now I'm going to be talking mostly about YouTube. And this is a very specific study that is focusing on the YouTube recommendations algorithm and whether there is really a rabbit hole of radicalization that the recommendations algorithm will take you towards. And so this study was just very recently, last week, published in an open access journal called First Monday. So you can take a look at the study itself, and also all of our data and the visualization that I'm going to be using some snippets from, and the classification that I'm going to be talking about is available online. So we're being very open with all of the study, and you can email me or my brilliant co-author, Mark Ledwich, if you're interested in looking at this data set, or if you're interested in looking at our visualization of this data as well. But before we get into the actual story, I just want to really quickly clarify some specific terminology that I'm going to be talking about. I think everybody is probably familiar with the basics of YouTube. So if you're not, this is a really short introduction to YouTube. Here we have a YouTube video that has been uploaded to a channel. This happens to be from a Stratcom channel. The video itself, we're looking at it, and then we're having on the right side a strip of different recommendations. So these recommendations are based on the original video that we were watching. So they might be from the same channel itself, like we have at the top, or they might be from something that is related, or something that YouTube's recommendation algorithm thinks that you would be interested in. And so here, we have a whole bunch of different recommendations. The algorithm has decided that if you keep on watching these recommendations, you will probably be engaging with YouTube furthermore, and you won't go on to playing around with Facebook or Instagram or their competitors otherwise. So why is this recommendation algorithm, and what is it showing interesting? Currently, there has been a narrative or a story in mainstream media for at least few years already, that if you keep on watching these recommendations that we have, it will eventually lead you to more and more extreme content. You will start off watching NATO Stratcom, and soon enough you're watching Illuminati videos from these conspiracy channels. And so there wasn't really a lot of research saying, all right, is this really true? Is this really actually happening? Which is why we conducted the study, myself and Mark, and we wanted to know, is this message really, is it really true? Is this really happening? So we started off the study by creating a classification of different YouTube channels, because we wanted to see where does the traffic flow, and what are the different classifications, what are the different political leanings that you have in YouTube. So we chose channels that were significantly, that were a little bit larger. We didn't go with very, very small channels which don't have a lot of viewership. We picked channels that have over 10,000 subscriptions, and we're focusing mainly on US politics. So there are English-speaking channels that discussing politics in UK, maybe some other countries, but because of language limitations and also data collection restrictions, this study is only considering the US politics channels which are in English. And it would be very interesting to see if the same thing holds true for other languages, but in this case, we're just looking at the US politics. So we chose channels which had at least 30% of their content that was discussing political topics. Some of them were more on the cultural commentary side, but still steering towards political discussion. And out of this, we created a list of 800+ channels that fit within this study and the political YouTube sphere, enough viewership and enough discussion about politics. So out of these 800 channels, we wanted to see, all right, so what are the different political sides? What are people really talking about on YouTube? And what are the different polar opposite of the political discourse there? So we had a project where myself, Mark, and a volunteer tagged all these 800+ channels with at least 4 different tags that would describe what kind of content is there. And so this meant watching a lot of political YouTube and trying to figure out what is this channel really about. Are they talking about conspiracies? Is this fairly mainstream? Or is this something like more extreme or not? And out of this tagging projects, we aggregated 14 different categories, and now we can see what the different flows of the traffic are between these categories. So let's take a look at some of these classifications. And so I have a graph which shows these classifications, and these are by the viewership number. So this is not yet the recommendation algorithm. So at the very top, we have a category that is the center-left mainstream media. And this category gets the overwhelming number of all the YouTube video views. So this is where this is what people are watching. And so these channels are channels such as CNN channel, MSNBC channel, PBS channel, BBC, ABC in Australia, Canadian broadcasting, lots of mainstream channels that also exist on cable news or other news. And they all have a large YouTube presence, and they are all relatively watched. So people don't watch their news from television anymore. They go to YouTube channels. They find these shorter snippets, and this is where a lot of the political viewership comes from. The second category is the more partisan left-wing category. And in this category, we still have lots of mainstream outlets, but in this category, we mapped the kind of content that is very critical of the current US administration, and the categories that these type of videos are often late-night talk shows. So as an example here, I have the Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, which is a popular cable TV program, and a lot of these late-night talk shows, they have their shorter clips on YouTube, and people are watching them quite a bit since they get 12 million daily views. And then we have the third largest category, which we call the partisan right. So in this category, we would have the channels that are very pro-current administration. And so the largest channel in this category is Fox News, and the viewership numbers are slightly less than in the top two categories, which are both either centrist or left-leaning. And this is mainly explained by the number of mainstream media outlets that exist that are more left-wing, and Fox News in US is the only major right-wing partisan channel. So their channel is the one that gets the bulk of the views of this kind of partisan right categories. There are some smaller channels, but Fox News is overwhelmingly the largest one. So these are all the kind of content that people wouldn't consider radicalizing. And these kind of mainstream outlets, they have their message, and it's also available in your news channels, your cable news. So the interesting categories are at the bottom, where we can see all these different smaller channels, which are rather focusing on a niche area of politics. The ones that have been mostly discussed in media are the conspiracy channels, and then the white identitarian channels, which are considered potentially radicalizing. So you watch conspiracy channels, you start believing in all kinds of wacky things. You watch white identitarian channels, you are advocating for total segregation of all the nations. So the conspiracy channels, they are out there, they have viewership, but they are not really significant if you consider how much more the central left or partisan right channels get viewership altogether. So now we're talking in completely different figures. We're talking not tens of millions, but some millions daily views. Also, there are some more niche categories of political YouTube that advocate for socialism, men's rights. There's a fair bit of group of activists who are on the atheist side. And then finally, we do have some channels that are veering towards this white identitarian grouping and advocating for all kinds of very drastic measures. But now I'm going to show you a couple of examples of what is actually happening with the recommendations algorithm. So let's start with an example of the partisan left. So we have here John Oliver's channel, if you're familiar with, this is a late night talk show. It is often criticizing the administration, and it gets a lot of views. So in this chart, we see on the right side, we have the traffic, the left side, we have the traffic that is flowing into this channel. In the middle, we have the channel itself, and then here on the right side, we have the traffic that is outgoing from this channel. So this is what the recommendation algorithm will show you if you watch one of John Oliver's videos. And on the left side, this is what you likely watched if you end up watching this John Oliver video. So some of the things that I want to highlight is the numbers of the views. So we have 2.5 million impressions going into this channel, and similarly, we have a large number of outgoing impressions. So what this basically says is that if you watch John Oliver, you're very likely to be recommended more John Oliver or something that is very similar than John Oliver. All right, let's take another example, and this is now a conspiracy channel called the Next News Network, and now we're getting into very drastically different outcomes. So here we have the recommendations going to this channel, and now we're dealing it in tens of thousands of impressions. So still, there is viewership. It is a widely viewed channel, but it's not in the same realm than what John Oliver was. Then you watch a clip of this, and this is where YouTube will send you. It will send you out to Fox News. And so you're getting all the recommendations on the left side, and you will get not the same channel, not even something similar, but you will get Fox News. So this is not really supporting the theory that you will get radicalized and you will get sent towards down the rabbit hole, and you would get a lot of these similar channels or something more radicalizing, but you will get something more mainstream. And finally, we can take a look at the final category, which we mapped as white identitarian. For example, we have the channel called American Renaissance. They are advocating for segregation in US. And here, now we're in the realm of thousands of views, so this is a very minor channel. And again, we can see the similar pattern that we had with the conspiracy theories. We are not being sent to the same category or even something more drastic. We're again being sent to Fox News, which is kind of in the same realm, but way less extreme and in the mainstream realm. So what does it all mean? It means that the overwhelming number of all these recommendations is going to the mainstream. And this makes sense from YouTube's perspective because these channels, the mainstream channels, they're going to be advertiser friendly. No one's going to come and shout at YouTube, you're again showing our ads with this wacky conspiracy theory video. Why are you doing it? Take it out. So they are focusing all of their efforts on boosting up the content that is going to be safe, that is going to be uncontroversial. And this is really hurting some of the smaller YouTube channels that are more centrist, that might have interesting content, but don't get as much recommendations. So here we have a few channels which are kind of centrist. There's a, for example, very popular channel by a comedian, podcaster, Joe Rogan, who has interviews from all walks of life, but he also has some conspiracy theories sometimes on, talking about UFOs. So his recommendations are suffering from this type of algorithmic recommendations. And then finally, we get to these smaller channels where we have political commentary from different perspectives. They are still getting some recommendations, but not as much as what the mainstream would. And the smaller and more niche we go towards, let's say, the atheist groups or the socialist groups, the less and less the algorithm benefits these groups. And when we go to the very extremes, then we have almost non-existent recommendations. All right, so if you have any questions, if you want to take a look at the data, the links were posted in the beginning. You can always email me or Mark. Happy to talk about all the research that we've done and also share all this data with everybody. So we're having very open research platforms, so you're welcome to take a look at yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. That was really, really interesting. Do you think that your research findings that YouTube doesn't or is no longer serving as a radicalizer apply to the non-English speaking digital spaces as well?
That's a very good question, and that's something that I would be really interested to look at. I would probably think that in large countries where, let's say, the political situation is rather similar and where YouTube has a lot of presence and a lot of people working, it probably would. If it's something more niche, where YouTube doesn't really have a lot of control and maybe doesn't have understanding of the language or the political situation, it's hard to know. So we only were able to focus on the US politics. I'm not fluent in German, and Mark is Australian, so that was most of our interest area as well. And it is the really large part of YouTube, but it would be fascinating to see if the same thing holds true, for example, Germany, Russia, or the Spanish or Portuguese-speaking countries as well.
Absolutely. And is your research methodology available publicly? And
yes,
will we try and replicate that in other countries using the same methods?
Yeah, that would probably be. Yeah, we can discuss how that would be done and help out if someone is willing to do that. So the classification is the tricky part when it comes to that kind of content, because you would have to be really well versed in the political situation in those countries as well. So that's also one limitation of our study. But yeah, all the data that we've collected and all the methods and all the code that you can use to create nifty visualizations is out there.
Great, thank you so much. So, yeah.